This is the Nordstrom store in San Francisco. It's one of 74 Nordstroms all around the country with annual sales of nearly $3.5 billion. Nordstrom's maintains an inventory of items nearly double that of the typical specialty store or department store. That means a gigantic database to keep track of inventory and sales. So when they went looking around for a computing environment, it was serious business. They looked at OS/2, they looked at Unix, but they settled on Windows NT for Microsoft. Why? Well, we'll try to find out today as we try on Windows NT on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
That's right, we're taking a look back in time to July 31st of 1996, marking the 25th anniversary of Windows NT Workstation 4.0, a system I'm not very familiar with, but was released to the public of August 24th of 1996 for a retail price of $319 US. Windows NT, or New Technology, was a direct replacement for the unloved rocky past that was Windows NT 3.1. Microsoft tasked the NT development team and its team leader, David Cutler, to make a quantum leap beyond MS-DOS and the consumer Windows versions. Windows NT 3.x was the first Microsoft Windows operating system not to be built on the backbones of MS-DOS. It was a completely self-contained 32-bit operating system, which was really ahead of anything else that Microsoft was releasing at the time. Windows NT 3 was built on the same design specifications shared with its consumer operating system, Windows 3.1, but it provided an enterprise level of features and security. As time went on and service packs came out, it became clear that there was actually a problem. The operating system itself was actually quite slow, often running slower than its consumer counterpart with particular applications. Application support was limited, as well as the requirements to run the operating system itself. Not everyone had large amounts of memory in their computers back in those days. Memory was expensive, and NT3 needed a lot of it. With 1996 coming around the corner, and after the launch of a very successful consumer OS, Windows 95, the Windows NT team was back into development and busy preparing the next version of Windows NT. In an effort to secure commercial success, programmers took to fielding customer calls and travelled to customer sites where NT was being used. Huge efforts went into perfecting the new OS as much as possible, down to contacting individual reviewers directly to do whatever it takes to solve their issue to avoid bad reviews. Microsoft hired a special 16-member team of programmers to design special pieces of code, whose only function is to wring tiny bits of speed from selections of the program. Mr. David Cutler, head of NT development, gifted an additional prize in the end stages of NT4 to the development team managers that had the most bugs. It involved a hand mixer and a bowl filled with dog droppings. Mock dog droppings. Can't even read my own script here. But yeah, the efforts paid off, and with corporate customers often reportedly skipping Windows 95 in favour of the new NT OS, going from 6.1 million lines of code to a whopping 16.5 million lines of code, Windows NT version 4.0 was released mid of 1996. It was the golden ticket that the Windows NT development team needed to secure the future of the technology. Well, given it's 25 years later, I'm going to crack the seal on this new boxed copy of NT4 Workstation. I picked this thing up online. It was probably in some hoarder's basement or something for 25 years, but I've had it on my shelf for about 6 months. But yeah, definitely thought this was the time to break it open. Although I've never really used the OS, I've sort of had this fascination with its dark sort of blue cloudy night sky design there. It was very mystical and very different. None of the machines I've really used over the years have had it pre-installed, except like one of them at a school, but that was just had any old operating system on it really. But yeah, today's definitely the day we check it out, see what we get in the box. We also have a look back at some of the operating system itself, compare it to its its companion, which is Windows 95. It was the same sort of product time period and stuff. So yeah, definitely it's going to be an interesting sort of look back on it. And as I said, this box is in superb condition. Well, might not be for long, but we'll try and keep it that way. Looking around the rear of the box, we have just the typical sort of marketing mumbo jumbo there, system requirements, and a basic list of features that the system comes with. The most powerful desktop operating system for business computing. You know, that's what it's all about right there. Business computing at its finest. But yeah, having the Windows 95 shell was a huge selling point because it made using Windows a lot easier. So, you know, having that behind you is really good. I don't know if the developers of this really, you know, wanted that, but, you know, it worked because they sold a megaton of these. And also in the future, you know, it really cemented the future of Windows NT. But yeah, we'll just have a quick look at the system requirements here. Flipping around to the back of the box, you can definitely tell just reading the little stats on the back, there is actually quite a bit more happening behind the skin of this one, especially when you compare it to its consumer counterpart here. But yeah, so Windows 95 needs a minimum of a 386. It can run on as little as 4 megabytes of memory, believe it or not. I did not know that. 8 megabytes recommended, and of course a bit more memory if you're using things like active desktop. On the other hand, Windows NT needs a minimum of a 486 processor or higher. It starts at a minimum of 16 megabytes of memory, and you know, if you're using active desktop with, you know, Internet Explorer 4 version 4, that is, 24 megabytes of memory is recommended for that as well. So yeah, quite a bit more power required. And you know, back in the day, computers were expensive, memory was expensive, so yeah, definitely wouldn't have been a consumer operating system, this one. But yeah, I think what we need to do now is open this one up, have a look in the box, and see what we get inside. I do feel really bad about doing this just because it's sealed. And sealed products are getting harder and harder to find, but you know what, I think we're gonna do it, you know, see what's inside of it. I might actually be able to use my nail instead of my knife, but let's just go along here and just... And this knife is blunt, not helping. You can hear a floppy disk rattling around. Here's the shell of the box. Okay. This is what we get in the box. Wow. Fresh install of NT. It's actually kind of inflated. It's really hard to see, but the air inside of the disk is sealed and has expanded. I've never seen that before, so that's a very fresh copy, very plump copy of NT4 with Service Pack 4. Ah, interesting. I thought this would have had this built in or slipstreamed in, but it looks like we just get another sort of retail copy of NT4 workstation. We have the boot floppies. So this is used if your computer doesn't support booting from CD-ROM. Some README documentation, the address for the New Zealand office. Auckland. So yeah, you just fill out your registration copy. You could also do it online, I guess, if you wanted. Service support, certified program, press books, consulting services, things like that. Got the warranty information, and a black and white quick start guide by the looks of things. The Start Here manual is for new and experienced users of Microsoft Windows NT. In part 1, you'll learn the basic features of NT4, including the new Windows 95 interface, designed to get you up to speed quickly and easily. Part 1 provides the step-by-step procedures you'll need to get started. Part 2 lists the system requirements for this new version, and then guides you through installing the new operating system. Very schwanky with those graphics. Very neat. It's cool actually having this because a lot of the stuff will be missing these days from a lot of these packages. But yeah, I think what we'll do is we will load this up on a machine, have a look through it, see what it offered back in the day, its feature sets, things that made it different from Windows 95, good, bad, the ugly, and yeah, go from there. Alrighty, looking at some of the feature sets available in NT4, that some are available in Windows 95, some aren't, but for starters we have real user management. That's right, no longer can you press escape to log into a computer. You actually have to type a password in. Each individual user that's created essentially has their own profile, just like today, with their own username and password that they have to enter into the system. Part of the whole domain management thing as well. We have real sound support for Windows NT, which is really handy to have because it was missing. We have some better disk management utilities that can map iSCSIs, do partitioning, drive lettering, things like that, as well as better networking support, especially for TCP/IP or IPv4, something that's very well used today. We also now have the inclusion of the event viewer, something that's also quite well used to diagnose problems with the machine with services. Performance monitoring as well to help narrow down performance related issues and bottlenecks in your system. Very handy. DirectX 2 is now bundled in by default. I've squeezed 5 in here, more on that later. And long file names is something that's now really handy to have as well. You know, you can have a really long file name limit. And my personal favorite, the Task Manager. It was the brainchild of the developer named Dave Plumber. I've linked a couple of videos of his in the description. He developed it for himself to see the inner workings of Windows NT while working under the development team. Thankfully, the head Mr. Cutler agreed to bundle it with NT, and now it's a part of the Windows operating system environment that we use still to this day. Which I'm really thankful for because it's something that I use a lot. Mr. Plumber, if you're watching, thanks man, helped me in my day job. But yeah, also he was tasked with porting Space Cadet Pinball, which was developed by Maxis for Microsoft. He had to reverse engineer quite a lot of it, and there's also some cheat codes you can put in there as well. And once again, just follow the links in the description. But yeah, definitely a staple of entertainment, shall we say, on computers in the office. Alright, installing Windows NT couldn't be easier if you've got CD-ROM booting capabilities, otherwise you're stuck with floppies. There is a 4 gig file limit in terms of formatting an NTFS drive. It's a FAT16 only support as well, so you're still limited. I think it was 1 or 2 gigabytes, but the install process is pretty much the same as Windows 95, 98 or previous versions if you've installed them before. And the shell, as you can see, is very similar to Windows 95. And that's what it was intended to be, feature for feature, to make it as easy to use as possible, and was actually the big selling point for the operating system. Alright, so now we're going to just take a look at some games. This is where things really split off between 95 and NT. Gaming is a different beast, so we're just going to start with some Quake 2, then some Half-Life, and some other games from there. Of course, running Quake 2 without sound to get maximum FPS. The overhead to run NT does show with the cost being about 2 FPS thereabouts, but overall it's actually really good considering just how much is happening behind the curtains. But however, DOS support for games is really not good. You can really tell the OS is not built upon DOS. Some games do work, but without sound, like Biomenace here. Others don't run at all, and DOSBox might be your only option. And on a computer like this with a 233MHz Pentium CPU, you can really tell that it's struggling. You can see by the 100% CPU usage here in DOSBox, but you know, it might be your only option, or using a boot disk to get around it. But yeah, it's definitely been an interesting one, that's for sure. Some games that were meant to work with Windows NT failed to boot or work at all. Unreal, a few others I tried. However, games that also specifically don't support NT seem to work fine, like SimCity, for example, supports 3.1 and 95. Yeah, it's definitely strange. There's not a good source of what games are supported by the operating system. You sort of either have to trial them or, you know, painstakingly check their README files. I did find a spreadsheet of a guy who went through his entire game collection and tested it on various operating systems. So I'll link that in the description because it can help narrow down some of the bulk of that, because there's quite a lot of games in there. So definitely, whoever made that, thank you. But yeah, thankfully the games that are included work just fine, which is really handy because they're actually really, you know, classic. But yeah, this is definitely why I think the operating system doesn't have the massive following that DOS or Windows 9X has. It just simply doesn't have the games and hardware support that people love to use these days still. But yeah, looking back at my month using it, and yes, I did use this for a whole month, I had 0 lockups. I had a written note for blue screens, which was 0, believe it or not. And this is with me pushing the boundaries on things like DirectX 5, loading it up with lots of third-party applications, and things like that. But yeah, you can tell it is a little bit more sluggish than its 9X counterpart. There is a bit more going behind the shell, and you can definitely tell, but it's, for what I've got it running on, it's actually not too bad. But yeah, it definitely handles multitasking just a little bit better than 95 did. But yeah, with this chapter coming to a close, this is the last version of Windows NT to be labelled as Windows NT. Microsoft discontinued the operating system on June 30th of 2002. Many of the technologies developed by NT4 and its predecessors we still use to this day, really. Windows 10 is just really NT, as some people say. But yeah, as 9X, DOS also fell behind. The first consumer version of NT took the reins in 2001 with a product called Windows XP Home Edition. But yeah, a system that wasn't as well remembered, probably due to the lack of support with DOS. But 25 years later, it was quite interesting having a look back at this obscure operating system. But yeah, check out the video description for more information. It was definitely a good challenge looking back at this. There's also going to be an extra build video if anyone's interested. But yeah, thanks again for watching. Hope everyone enjoyed a look back at 25 years later. Windows NT4, the technologies it gave us, and the platforms it provided for today. Alright, thanks again for watching.